What's up, bass players? Thanks for joining me. Today I want to talk about how to transpose a melody into all 12 keys and why you should be doing that. Firstly, let's get the why right out of the way. One, if you're a musician, you should be able to speak the language. You should know some of these theory concepts. If you can play your scales, you should know how they work and how these melodies move around them. I just think that's a very important thing to do as a musician. More importantly, as a bass player, you really never know what key someone's going to ask you to play a song in unless you're playing with a band where you only play those couple of tunes and you know exactly what's going to be going on. I have found myself in many scenarios where I need to be able to just play something in a new key right on the spot, and I haven't had time to work it out and rehearse it. So being able to do these kind of analytical things beforehand really helps when you're on stage and someone calls a tune in a really weird key. If you're a jazz musician, this is going to be a very natural concept. You've probably been learning all your melodies and all 12 keys anyway, or your chord changes and your progressions. Hopefully, if you're a jazz musician, you already have a teacher who's kind of working you through some of these things. Most of you are probably going to be coming from a rock or similar to that kind of background where you really only see tunes in one key, or maybe like one or two keys. But what I have found is that even if I really know a tune in its original key and can play along with the recording, that doesn't always translate to being able to play it with a band if they call it in a brand new key. Especially if I'm playing in a blues rock setting, I could hear any number of keys for any given tune. The thrill is gone. I've played in probably 4 or 5 different keys depending on if it's a piano player leading it, a guitar player, whatever key the singer can do it in, and that's going to be one of your biggest things. If a singer calls something in a random key, because that's where it fits well in their vocal range, you need to be able to keep up. One of the bands I toured with, depending on what time of day we were playing, the guitar players would change keys very frequently. I'd have to know all these tunes in 3 or 4 different keys, and as a bass player, we don't typically have the option of putting a capo on and just changing, our frets from there. We don't have these chord shapes that guitar players are relying on. We need to know what's going on. One of my favorite examples is the song House of the Rising Sun. It's a tune I know really well. I've played it many a time, especially in the original key. I can play along to the recording. I can play it on guitar. I can sing it, all those things. I was on a blues rock gig one time, and they asked me, do you know this tune? Like, yeah, totally, let's go. And as soon as the drummer started to count in the song, the guitar player looked over and said, okay, we're going to do it in D minor and as a reggae. And I had those first 4 beats of the tune to figure out how to play House of the Rising Sun in a brand new key that I'd never worked on, never rehearsed, or any of that stuff. So it was really helpful that I knew how to do that and could just on the fly make it happen. So today we're going to look at a really simple melody, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and we're going to just figure out how to analyze it and how we can apply this to any other song we're looking at. Let's get playing. I think the easiest way to do this is I'll just play the melody for anyone who either doesn't know it or just needs a quick refresher on it, give you a chance to learn it by ear, watch my hands. This is a 5-string bass, high C string. Don't let that throw you off. I'm going to play this melody in the key of C major, so here it is. So like I said, easy melody. Many of you probably already know. I know it's a childish kid tune, but it's a really good place to start to learn how to analyze these things before we dig into really hard and complex like John Coltrane licks and other things like that. We'll just set a really solid foundation and then move on from there. So how we're going to analyze this, we're in the key of C major. I know I'm just going C to C with no accidentals. C, D, E, F, G, A, B natural, C. Those are all my notes. This melody starts on the root note, C, and then we know the next note. Hopefully we can know what note that is in the fretboard. If you're an intermediate, I'm hoping that you know, generally speaking, what your notes are. So we know this is the note G. That doesn't really help me when I want to move this around. Even those first 2 notes, if I want to play this in the key of F, I have to know what scale degrees I'm playing. So if I'm starting on the root note, and then I'm going to go up to G, in order to figure out what note that is, I'm just going to count up the notes of the scale. C, D, E, F, G. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to be 1 to 5. My next note was A. And again, I need to know what scale degree that note is. So I can do the same thing. I can just count up. If I know G was already 5, A is going to be the 6th note of that scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's what we're going to do for this entire melody. We're just going to take a look at, figure out what scale degrees everything is, and then move little bits and pieces of this to a new key. So we started 1, 5, 6, back to 5. And now what's cool is we just kind of come back down the scale. 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, with each of those notes, ask yourself, what scale degree is this? You can just start from the root and count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can just kind of count yourself through each one of those. And I would highly suggest writing this stuff down so you're not trying to like figure it all out, like slow it down for yourself in any way you can. But go through the entire melody and just try and analyze what scale degree is this, count up from the root, and then let's move this to a brand new key. So if we take even that very first phrase, we're going to start with 1, 5, 6, 5. Let's move that to the key of F. That's F, that's my new tonal center. And more than just knowing the hand pattern, I'm going to try and think through all my scale degrees. So what's 1 to 5 in the key of F? Well, again, I can start on F and just count up scale degrees until I get to the 5th note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, that's the note C. After a while, you won't have to be counting through these things. You're going to start analyzing so much of this stuff that F to C is 1 to 5 is going to be automatic for you, as it is for any top level pro that you're already watching and checking out. From there, I went 1 to 5 to 6. So hopefully you can already see the pattern, how that's going to work. But I would have 1 to 5 with C, and then 6 is just a whole step up, D natural, back to C. So all in told, I have F, C, D, C. Once I have all of those numbers, this is where I could transpose this melody to any given key. I don't want to take up too much time. I'm not going to play through the entire melody in all 12 keys. I don't typically play through entire melodies in all 12 keys. I usually am doing this kind of analytical work with very short 1 to 2 bar phrases, occasionally a 4 bar phrase if that's the whole length of the phrase and it fits kind of under my hands in a way that I think it's going to be helpful to move around all 12 keys. Very rarely will I do longer phrases. There's one particular Bach passage that I think is an 8-bar phrase that I play on all 12 keys, but I use that mostly as a warm-up, and it's a very easy shape that really fits well on bass, so I do it there. I would highly recommend you go through the process of writing down all 12 keys, write out the number analysis for each note of the original melody in the key of C, write it out in F, write it out in G, all 12 keys, go through. And the reason you want to get comfortable with this, it's this kind of number analysis that I was doing when I was on stage trying to play House of the Rising Sun. I'm thinking through, okay, I know it goes from 6 to 1, and then it does some weird turnarounds, and I'm thinking about the shapes and the interval relation from chord to chord. I'm doing the same thing when I'm playing a blues tune in any given key, or I have a lot of pop tunes that get called in random keys. And again, like I said, if a guitar player wants to move a song and he just has to move a capo, I have to know what I'm doing. I have to know how those notes fit in a new key. This is where having the personal teacher comes in really handy, is that you have someone to bounce these ideas off of. They can double check your work, show you where your mistakes are, congratulate you when you got things right and did it really well. I'd love to be the one to do that. So if you're looking for someone and you're at that more intermediate stage and you're looking to kind of continually advance where you're on and need more of this theory help, please let me know. Shoot me an email. Love to work with you. Thanks for joining me again today, guys. I will see you in the shed.